New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Hello, Merry Christmas and welcome back. I am Reverend Dr. Sharri Johnson and I am delighted to welcome you back to Global Focus today. Our guest today is going to give us a little different take than most of my guests do. He is a focus minister. He is a, quote, retired, end quote, focus minister. But my understanding is that it takes at least 3 tries for a CSL minister to actually retire, or any other New Thought minister. And the topic that he has embraced and started teaching deeply since he retired is love. And it is one of my favorite topics. And I didn't see how anybody could not love to hear about love. So I asked him to come and he said, yes, please help me welcome Reverend Jim Starke from Beyond Spirit Education. I understand, thank you so much for agreeing to come, that you're going to start with a reading from Emerson.
I am.
Oh, yay. Go ahead.
Yeah. So when I was reading the essay, or actually looking for the essay Love by Emerson, I actually found this poem by Emerson called Give All to Love. Give all to love, or obey thy heart. Friends, kindred days, estate, good fame, plans, credit, and the muse. Nothing refuse. Tea is a brave master. Let it have scope. Follow it utterly. Hope beyond hope. High and more high, it dives into noon. With wing unspent, untold intent, but it is a God, knows its own path and the outlets of the sky. It was never for the mean. It requireth courage stout. Souls have doubt, valor unbending, it will reward. They shall return more than they were and ever ascending. Leave all for love, yet hear me, yet one word more thy heart behooved. One pulse more of firm endeavor. Keep thee today, tomorrow, forever, free as an Arab of thy beloved. Cling with life to the maid, but when the surprise, first vague shadow of surmise flits across her bosom young, of a joy apart from thee, free be she, fancy free. Nor thou detain her vesture's hem, nor the palest rose she flung from her summer diadem. Though thou loved her as thyself, as a self of purer clay, though her parting dims the day, stealing grace from all alive, heartily know, when half gods go, the gods arrive.
I love reading Emerson. When I was in school and we were assigned Emerson and everybody else would complain about how hard he was to read, I said, but it's music, it's poetry. And they laughed at me, but I didn't know he actually wrote poetry. That's beautiful.
Well, he writes poetry in all of his essays.
Well, it is poetry. I know it
2 or
is.
3 lines of poetry in all of his essays. Even the essay on love. I mean, it's got a few little spaces marked out through each one, which is just poetry. And the thing I like about Emerson is, well, we obviously know that love and law are what we teach in Science of Mind. And it's the T in this poem he refers to as transcendentalism, which is very much in alignment with Science of Mind. An interesting note that I really loved when our minister, Reverend Elizabeth Clare, retired, and Reverend Kenneth Wilcox took over. David Leonard, he invited David Leonard out to speak one Sunday shortly after he came in. And David Leonard, who's known as the Goofy Sufi in our movement, I know, huh? Shared that his teacher, and also Ken's teacher, on his deathbed shared with David that he wished that throughout his teaching that he had concentrated more on the love than the law. And to me, it's because the law follows love.
Yep.
Without the love, you can't hold on to anything in perpetuity or in for any length of time. It leaves you. It goes away because you don't have that intensity, that passion that requires that's just required to carry that love through, and to carry that business choice or whatever it might be through to its completion and continuance.
Love is what makes it possible to live within the law.
Yeah.
Because law by itself is harsh and hard and
Really.
and arguable. And love is the yes and that goes with it, that makes it work, that gives us the ability to say, okay, I can do that. And besides that, it just feels really good.
I remember a friend of mine who moved up to St. Augustine from Puerto Rico after his whole life just kind of collapsed around him. He moved up to St. Augustine and nothing was working for him. He had a decent job, but that kind of fell apart, and he wasn't sure what to do. I said, Don, we're riding in my car, and I pulled down the visor on the passenger side. I said, look in that mirror and say to yourself, I love you. Tell yourself you love you. And he just slapped that thing back up to the ceiling and said, I can't. And then he read my ex-wife's and my entire metaphysical library, I think. And he finally got it. And he moved from St. Augustine down to Fort Lauderdale, and his life miraculously, as we might say, turned around for him.
See, I can agree with that because of my definition of miraculous. A miracle is the outworking of a universal law, the fundamentals of which we are unfamiliar with as yet.
Yeah.
God doesn't break rules. We just don't know all the rules. It's one of the reasons. And I love what you said
here.
Because I used to buy those little round mirrors about this big in packs like this. And I would give them to people for homework. Said, you have to carry this around with you every day for a week. And 3 times a day, you have to take it out of your pocket. You have to look yourself straight in the eye and say, God loves you, and so do I. And, at first they're going, I can't do that. I can't dude, I can't say that. So that's at first I used to just say I love you, and they couldn't do that. But God loves you, and so do I. Kind of ease them into it. So yeah, love is the answer. There's no Emerson, Thoreau, one of those guys said, this transcendentalist said, there is no problem love cannot solve. Yeah. There is no challenge love cannot face. And at the same time, I understand I can't. And I understand it because when my husband died and I'm going, all of a sudden I'm out in the middle of no place by myself with 2 dogs and a cat. How am I supposed to do this? Where is the love in this? Yeah. And it's there. You have to be willing to find it. But grief is kind of a weird filter. You have to just, it's like standing in a fog on one foot with your arms out and saying, okay, God, where do I put my left foot now?
Just put it down. Trust.
Yep. And trust is love in action.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. So what are you doing with this Emerson stuff that you're studying and learning? And
I'm trying to, well, I'm grieving at the moment, but of a relationship. But beyond that, I have a spiritual living circle, which is my third, I think it's my third ministry. I took it over from one of my former practitioners in my last ministry, who had been doing this spiritual living circle for 7 years. Wow. And and we were using Science of Mind magazine. He was using Science of Mind magazine. It was meeting twice a month, first and third Thursdays, and using Science of Mind magazine's questions for spiritual living circles from articles in Science of Mind magazine, and did that for 7 years. And I decided I wanted to do something a little different. So I used the Science of Mind articles for a while, and just the last month I decided I wanted to do something a little bit differently. So I started out with sharing Neville, a couple of Neville's essays, and they went over really well. So I jumped in and I shared a couple of Emerson's essays. This one on the one on love that I sent to you, and another one that escapes me right now. But everybody has really enjoyed them, and our sessions are an hour and a half long, and we read them and we talk about them. We read them and we dissect them, if you will, or summarize them during our hour and a half session, and they work out perfectly because they're 11 to 13 pages on most of them. Well, in Word they are 11 to 13 pages, and they work out perfectly. We've finished so far. We've finished every article except for the last one we started, which was an Emerson on the soul, oversoul. That's so. A little bit longer.
Do you? This is the former college professor talking here. Do you prepare questions in advance, or do you trust that they're going to arise organically from that the discussion is going to generate itself from the article?
I trust.
Well, it's probably easier to do that with Emerson than it was with computer science, but still.
It's funny when I was teaching when I was teaching on my spirit education site. I had prepared questions, but even when the questions are prepared, you ask the question. When I prepare the questions and ask the question on whatever book I've decided to teach on, you get this silence. When you say, so what does anybody think of this? And you get that awkward silence. And I got very used to having that awkward silence. And it's really something else to be able to sit there and get you. It's hard to get used to. and not just want to start back into something, but you know that somebody's just sitting there in the class going, this sounds like a stupid question, a stupid answer, so I really don't want to share it. But we know there are no stupid answers.
There aren't any.
Yeah,
it's hard to get the first person to talk. Once the first person answers the question or says something, then the others feel like the gate's been opened. But
absolutely.
Getting that first one to talk, and one of the pieces of advice they give you when you start one of those circles is, don't be the first one. Ask the question and then let other people answer before you start talking. And sometimes the only way you can get them to talk is to be the first one.
Yeah.
But so I would always make a couple of extra questions that I could kind of throw out as bait.
And I also, I never did this before where you just read a book. I know ministers that have given classes, and that's what they do, is they share the book in the class. But I guess I had a lot of questions, and I shared some sections of whatever chapter we were working on, but I never shared an entire reading with the class. I thought it was kind of redundant, and that it was saying that I don't expect you to read this to the students. You don't have to read it because I'm going to talk about it in class. But I really have enjoyed reading Emerson and reading some of these New Thought authors, because they are very unique, especially since most of the writing is over 100 years old, or so much of it is, especially in the Transcendentalists and the early New Thought, that it almost requires translation.
Well, and here's the thing. I used to teach when I was an undergrad. I was part of what was it back in 1975, a new government work study program designed for returning Vietnam vets. And my group was called DABS. It stood for Divorced and Back to School. And we were mostly women, not exclusively, but mostly. And I worked in the Student Learning Center. And my job was to learn about learning so that I could teach other people how to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I discovered is that, and I practiced this when I was studying Plato for one of my ministerial courses. If you're having a hard time wading through something, read it. I used to think people who read the book in class were lazy. They didn't want to prepare a lecture, so they would just have the students read. Well, it's not it at all. It's that when you're struggling to really understand something, you should read it out loud, because reading it out loud gives you 3 inputs. You see it, you say it, you hear it. And here's the important thing that nobody tells you about. It slows you the hell down.
Right.
When you're reading something you don't understand, you go as fast as you can go to get through it because you don't understand it and you want to just have it over with. But if you stop and read it, all of a sudden that thing's got meat on its bones. So I understand your hesitation to do it, but I applaud your decision to go ahead and do that, because it really is a wonderful tool that people don't think about.
Yeah. And it was Reverend Michelle Wadley that actually I dropped into one of her classes years ago in person in New Jersey. And she was reading Creative Mind. And it was like by Ernest Holmes. And it was like, I didn't understand why she was reading it. But when I read this essay by Emerson Love to the class, I knew, because I'd read it twice before I went to class. And Emerson's very obtuse.
No, he just has a vocabulary that is extraordinarily broad and 100 years old.
You don't have to defend him. He's obtuse.
I love Emerson.
So do I. But it wasn't until we got into class and I read the first paragraph of Love. And a lady chimes up and says, "What the heck is he saying?" And
good for her.
that third reading, because I was reading it aloud, I understood it exactly. And I just recounted it back to her like I had the Cliff Notes or something. I mean, it was...
So what we have just learned from this story is that not only is Beyond Spirit education, still education is the focus of your ministry, but you're also the target of the education, aren't you? Because one cannot teach without learning.
That's an absolute... Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love teaching, but I'm just kind of in a place where I didn't feel like doing all the other stuff that goes along with it. And I will say, if anybody's interested in joining our Thursday sessions on the first and third Thursdays of the month, please email me. Sherry put my email on the bottom.
There it is.
heyrevjim@gmail.com, and I'd be happy to add you to our email list.
Because it's a Zoom class, right?
It's all on Zoom, yes.
Small detail that got left out of the discussion.
Yep. We have one California. It's at noontime Eastern. We have one California person, 5 people from West Virginia, a couple of people from Virginia, and there's a few other people. I'm not sure where they're from. So they're from all over the place, and it's been real enjoyable and a really good group. Yeah. So, yeah, no matter what we do in life, if we come from love, we always have what we need. We may not always have what we want, but we always have what we need. I was constantly supplied when I had my ministries, even though I really didn't take in any money that was mine. My ministry was paid. My ministry's expenses were paid for, and my teachers were well paid. And that's really all that mattered to me. I mean, I have a federal pension, Social Security.
Me too.
And that's what I live off of. So it's I'm fine. I've started other businesses. All the businesses I started were successes. And I never went into business expecting money. I expected that I was going to make people happy. That I was going to offer people my hot sauce business, my condiment business, whatever you want to call it. I made chutneys and hot sauces and mustards, spicy mustards and steak sauces and all sorts of different things. But it was all about making people happy. It wasn't about making money. But if I made a good product, the money came. I started a travel information website for the little island of Vieques of 9,000 residents. And at the time, in the mid-90s, there were 6 guest houses on the island. And I started a travel information website for the island of Vieques. And my biggest competition was Expedia, and they had nothing. They had nothing on Vieques on their website. And I actually got Google to take them down for the word search term Vieques. Mm-hmm. But within 5 years, the Navy left Vieques. The Navy was forced out of Vieques with protests and the Puerto Rican government being very unhappy with their presence. And the island boomed. There were about 4 or 5 year period where people were buying houses left and right. And Puerto Ricans were making out, selling their houses that they had on the market for years and years. And gringos were coming down and paying ridiculous sums of money for houses because it was still the cheapest place to buy in the Caribbean. And my website went from making me went from being a little side hustle to help a few friends out that had guest houses to being my full-time income, and replaced my hot sauce company. I sold my hot sauce company as the large companies, the large corporations were getting into it, and I couldn't compete with their marketing, and started this website went booming, and so I sold my other one and went with this. And then towards the end of
just wait, hold it.
Sure.
Hot sauce, retirement home, I mean vacation homes. How did you become a spiritual educator? Because those things are, I can see how spirit would need to be part of them. Love comes in everything, but that seems like not exactly a direct line.
Actually, it wasn't. It was kind of indirect, but I've always helped people. People seem to, during my life, people seem to gravitate towards me because I was more I guess a little more conservative than they were, and I was a little bit older than most of my friends, so they would come to me for advice. And of course, I always turned it back on them. What do you really want? What is it you expect out of your relationship, or what is it you expect out of this job, or what is it you expect going forward? And I let them come up with their own answers. But it was like, yeah, as I look back on it, I had a ministry back then too, and the hot sauce was a sideline. The website building was a sideline, but helping people was my main focus. And I realized that when I got into ministry, when in 1998 we moved up to Florida from Puerto Rico, and brought my hot sauce company with me. And it was in about 2002 I started going to the center here in St. Augustine, and my ex-wife and I, my former wife and I, started taking classes. And 2006 I became a practitioner. 2007 I started taking ministerial classes in Fort Lauderdale. And then by 2009, I was a licensed minister with CSL. And it's about that time that I realized, this is what I've been doing. This is what I want to continue to do. And so I moved into focus ministry. I didn't want to be the focus of a center and have that. I kind of saw, and it may be erroneous, kind of saw when I was in centers, different centers, especially with my first focus ministry, that so many of the audiences missed the message. And as in most spiritual organizations, they saw that person on the podium as their redeemer. And I didn't want to be that, because I'm not that. I'm just a guy that might be able to offer you a little advice, a little help, but I cannot save you. Nobody can save you. Nobody can save me except me.
Yep.
And that's what we teach. That's what we learn. That's what we learn in life, if we are to have a long and fruitful one. So.
Yep. So that's a question I ask a lot, just because I am an example of, this wasn't my first profession. I mean, I spent 10 years listening to people say you ought to be a minister, and me saying, no, don't be silly. Why would God want me to be a minister? Not noticing that I already was one. And in fact, that was what got me to go to ministerial school the first time, is my minister at the time heard me say that to somebody and took my arm, turned me around and said, you can't become a minister. You already are one. And then let go of my arm and walked away.
But you can have the credentials, and to get the
Yeah, that's the
credentials, you
thing.
do need to go.
That's the credentials are important for depending on what for focus ministers, they're certainly important. For pulpit ministers, not so much, oddly enough.
But it's funny. As a focus minister, I kind of lost the need to use a title. I think who you are and what you say speaks for you, speaks for yourself. It's how we act in the world speaks to who we are.
Oh, and you're quoting Emerson again without even trying. What you do speak so loudly that I cannot hear your words. Who you are speaks so loudly that I cannot hear your words. Emerson. I love Emerson. And that's absolutely true. Not a problem.
Sorry, I didn't mean to quote Emerson that time.
Well, as one of my favorite movies of all time, I joined a video club just so I could get a copy of this movie. It's called Enemy Mine. And it starred Louis Gossett Jr. was the Drac, and who was the human? See his face, and I can't call his name. But anyway, these two spacemen have crash landed on the same asteroid, and one of them is a human, and the other one is a Drac, which is an androgynous amphibian life form from another planet. And these two races have been at war for 500 years. And so the two of them crash land on this island, and the only way they can survive is to work together. Because it turns out that this asteroid is a mining center for a bunch of pirates. And they are staffing their mine with captured Dracs. And so they at one point they've built a fire and they've built a little shelter, and they're sitting around the fire in the evening talking. And you might remember back in the 50s, women wore a chain around their neck with a little Bible about this big. Usually had a pearl cover on it. And so he's sitting there, the Drac, and they won prizes for the makeup on this. I mean, you would have never believed that Louis Gossett Jr. was inside that body. I mean, it was just amazing. And so they're sitting at the fire, and he has this book on a chain, and he picks it up and he starts reading. Every night he's reading. Finally, God, I can see his face and I can't call his name. Okay, so the human says, "What is that? Why do you always have your nose buried in that?" And oddly enough, the Drac learned English a lot faster than the human learned Drac. So he says, it's our sacred reading, our sacred writing. And he says, "Your scriptures." So, well, can I read it? And the Drac gets this real shocked look on his face. He gets up and he takes it off and he walks around the fire and he puts it on his.
For those of you who just joined us, we're reviewing the science fiction movie
Enemy Mine.
Enemy Mine.
And it is, you almost got it right, because it is a very metaphysical movie. Very, very metaphysical movie. So he says, he starts to put it around. He says, "I can't take this. It's sacred." And he says, "You have to, because it must be given to you by the teacher. And I'm not worthy, but I'm all there is." And so they're teaching, and they're fighting monsters and they're fighting pirates and all this stuff. But the reason I bought the movie, the reason I brought the whole thing up, is because this one scene. They're standing on a cliff in front of the most glorious sunset you ever saw in your life. And the human is in front and the Drac is behind him. And the Drac says, "Repeat." And the human says, and then the Drac says, "Very good. Translate." He says, "If a person takes your coat, give him your shirt too." No, if a person takes your shirt, give him your coat too. And then he turns around and he looks at the Drac and says, "This is not news. I've heard all of this before." And the Drac says, "Of course, truth is truth." End of scene. They go into something else. I just went, yes, 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 yes. I was brand new in New Thought at that point, and it was just grabbed me and shook me. And then I discovered a decade later that Emerson does exactly the same thing, grabs me and shakes me. Absolutely. And it's nice to know that the same thing happens to you too, and the people in your circle.
Yeah, it's funny. The first, I don't know if I can find it real very, very quickly or not. The first one we shared. Yeah, it's not. Oh no, I don't remember.
The first Emerson that you did in your group, you mean?
Yeah, I've got to. Yeah, I can't find it. Anyways, but it might have been nature, but it was like there was so much in there that I hadn't gotten the first time I read it too. But that's true with everything we read. The first time we read it for an overview. The second time we read it, we read it for greater content, and then the third time we read it for at least for me, I read it for the truth. What's coming out of that's truth in me, or that's the universal truth.
The third time you read something, especially metaphysical things, the third time you read it is when you find out why it matters. Why you read it the first two times, because that's what the third time is about, is what does this mean to me? Why is this important in my life?
And how it has applied in your life
already. Yeah, it's not something I'm adding to my life. It's something I'm learning about it that was already there.
Yeah.
Yep. So there are some questions that I ask all my guests, because I've already asked them of you a couple of times, but I'm going to ask them again because you're not the same person who was here last time. The answers will change. So the first one is, especially now that you're doing Emerson, this is going to be more interesting. Okay. How does what you do in spirit education, what you do as retired Rev Jim Starke, how does what you do encourage, enhance, promote conscious evolution?
How can we consciously evolve without loving ourselves? And by extension, we're loving others. And by extension, we want for others what we want for ourselves. And if that's what we want, then what's the result there? Peace of mind, and hopefully peace in the world.
Boy, you just morphed that question right into the second question, which is, how does this contribute to peace on earth? So we'll just go on to the next question.
Sorry.
No, you're not. Okay, so the next question is there anything that you want the people who are watching this now or who see it later, because it's going to be archived, that you want them to know about what you think or what you do or who you are that I haven't asked you about?
I'm at a loss.
Well, then that must mean I'm doing a pretty good job today.
I guess you are.
Okay. And the next question is, presuming that everything goes exactly the way you want it to go, every little aspect of your life, every relationship, every encounter, every event, everything works exactly the way you want it to work. 10 years from now, what does Jim Starke and Beyond Spirit Education look like?
For spirit education, I can't really say. For Jim Starke, the only thing I can say is I'll love more, I'll love stronger, and I'll love irregardless of who or what the other person is.
Wow, you're going to be God.
We already are gods.
I know. Okay, last question. Will you come back? Oh, come
Yeah.
on. We always have fun when you come back. You got to come back.
Okay. I'll come
My
back.
next opening is November 26th of 2024. Can I plug you in?
Plug me in.
You got it. Thank you. Thank you so much. And folks, we
Yes,
have a pardon?
You asked me the last time I was on.
Yes.
We no sooner got into the room and you said, "When can you come back?"
Well, I try to be as
I guess it depended this time on whether or not I was a good client or a
no,
good
usually I don't ask until the end.
interviewee.
But I didn't want you to get away, and as you were kind of skittish, so I thought I better snag you right away. So here's the next. I want to let everybody know that next week we have another return guest. A couple of weeks ago, Marco Carrillo was on, and a practitioner whose focus ministry is called True North, and he told the beginning of a journey, and he's coming back next week to tell the ending. That's the part 2. So you've had all the appetizers, and the meat and potatoes is coming up next Tuesday. So don't miss it. For now, Happy New Year. Have a wonderful weekend. Bye-bye.
On behalf of everyone at New Thought Media Network, thank you for being a member of our virtual family. Your financial contributions help share the New Thought message with people from around the world. Please visit and contribute at www.ntmedia.org/donate. New Thought Media Network. Come be you. And please like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, peace and blessings.
Amazing, amazing, you will do amazing